Welcome to Image Adjustments in Photoshop. First, let's talk about what are adjustment layers. Adjustment layers, according to Adobe's help site, lets you experiment with color and make tonal adjustments without permanently modifying the pixels in an image. You can think of an adjustment layer as a veil coloring the underlying layers. So by default, an adjustment layer affects all layers below it, although you can change its behavior. When you create an adjustment layer, the Layers panel displays a white box representing the adjustment for that layer. To make image adjustments, there are three ways in Photoshop. The first way I'm going to show you is a destructive image editing process. So you can simply just go to the Image menu and go to Adjustments and choose one of these options. So I'm just going to choose the first one here. And I am just going to crank up that brightness and select OK. I just destroyed pixel data. That's what you don't really want to do. So the next two methods here, I'm going to undo this. So the next two methods here is using the adjustment panel, which is under Window, Adjustments, and it's just a panel here, a floating palette you can pull out. And you can choose one of the same options you can under the image adjustments. But this way, if you select one, notice now in the layers palette that it has an adjustment layer, an adjustment layer mask. And then you can adjust accordingly without destroying the pixel data. So let's say I like that, and this under this palette here. There we go. Let's say I don't like that. I can simply drag the layer now and delete it. Nothing was harmed. So the first method was destructive. The second and third method here, non-destructive. The third method is going to the layers panel and selecting the same thing as you would in the adjustment palette. So both work the same way. So maybe I want to do levels and adjust accordingly to my preference. There are all kinds of types of adjustment layers in Photoshop. Here are just a few adjustments to get you started. Let's talk about brightness and contrast. So brightness and contrast is the first button in the adjustment palette. Go ahead and click it. Now notice the properties, okay? So brightness, if you move the slider to the right, like so, it increases tonal highlights. If you move it to the left, it decreases the values and increases shadows. Contrast expands and shrinks the tonal values in the image. Contrast is the light-dark parts of the image. High contrast images will have highlights and dark shadows and full of color, while low contrast images will have more narrow range and look flat or dull. If you use the legacy brightness and contrast shifts all pixel values higher or lower when adjusting the brightness, this can cause clipping or a loss of image detail in some of the highlights or shadow areas. It is highly recommended to not use this in a photographic image. I'm going to delete this now. And let's talk about levels and curves. Levels is the second option in the adjustment palette. So I'm going to go ahead and click it. And I'm just going to zoom in here so you can actually see the palette. So here we are, we have the palette. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is what is a histogram. The histogram is this box here, this picture of this little tonal scale here. So you adjust levels. Levels adjust the intensity levels of an image shadows, midtones, and highlights. And this does not change the pixel value because you went through the adjustment layers panel. So I can adjust all three channels. I can adjust just the red channel. I can adjust just the green channel. I can adjust the blue. I can adjust all three and then adjust all three at once again to get what I need. So that's levels. So levels is the easiest way to make changes to your photos like so. So I'm going to delete this now. And now let's talk about, not levels, let's talk about curves. Curves, a little harder. Curves to the upper right represents the highlights, and the lower right represents the shadows. Does that make sense? I don't know. But it is a little harder to use. So you can change it, the line, like so, and it's really a guessing game, really. You can even plot another line, so I'm going to click here, and click another line here, and then like it's just really a guessing game and really precise. So curves is a little bit harder to work with, but if you have the time and really want to adjust it manually, use curves. So now I'm going to delete this, and delete this, delete this. Next, let's talk about exposure. So exposure is another type of adjustment you can do in Photoshop. It's meant to change the tonal ranges of high dynamic range images, and these images are also 32-bit images. So maybe the day you took this photo, you didn't correctly expose. So maybe you need to correctly expose it, or maybe you overexposed and you need to lower the exposure. Again, it's another experimental process that you need to work with. I hope this was informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing. See you next time.